I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up? Welcome. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at BPM. I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Do all of the things. We're going to keep it as tight as possible. I got a nice little outline and got a couple things to get to, a couple light little things. We're going to end with a little bit of on a heavier note, hopefully, and then make our way for Warrior class at 1 o'clock. And shh, I don't know if you know what that means. I don't. So we're going to have to tune in and find out. So anyway, welcome to those who were able to make it here. Those who will see this later, peace. Welcome to you as well. Let's get right to it. So a couple people have asked me for this. Oh, I'm already off my outline. See, I already messed up. One, as you see behind me, we are in McLuhan's Fishbowl. And as he said, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it was not the fish. An all-pervasive environment is always beyond perception. So we're starting there. And as this video is titled, Ted Lasso, Prince, and Financial Literacy are all neocolonialism. What I'm intending to do in less than an hour is demonstrate how neocolonialism presents itself in Ted Lasso, the history of Prince, and this concept of financial literacy. Neoliberalism and neocolonialism, I understand there's a variety of thought on their meaning and definitions. Simply put here, neoliberalism and neocolonialism are roughly the same thing, and each of them are just meant to be euphemisms or modern applications for colonialism and maintaining a colonialist relationship with colonized people. So the same extractive, the same material and immaterial relationships are at play in maintaining a relationship of colonization. And okay, so that's that. So the first thing we're going to start with is just a very quick and relatively quick reason to be reminded of the July 1st, 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday evening virtual book launch party right here at BPM. All of the details on the channel. Please come through if you can. Get a copy of the book in advance, if possible. If not, come through and maybe get a free or reduced copy, or at least buy one at full or even beyond full price, knowing that the money you're spending on the book is going to support one or another political prisoner effort or big broad efforts or something maybe of your own choice. Okay, so don't miss that. And to that extent, to that point, just the other day, this story came out on the 12th. Terry College, America's economy continued to grow and diversify while recovering from COVID-19. BuyingPower enthusiasts or regular viewers of this platform or this show will note and remember and recognize Terry College as the business school that houses the SeligCenter, which, as I've been talking about for a while now, has been the leading producer of the BuyingPower mythology. And here we go again. In the rebound from COVID-19 recession, the buying power of American households continued to grow and diversify in 2021. According to the University of Georgia's SeligCenter for Economic Growth's annual Multicultural economy report, America's buying power totaled $18.5 trillion in 2021, a 329% increase since the research series first report in 1990. Now, I have not I'm happy to follow up with more professional economists. Maybe we could get, you know what? Let me reach out to Jackie and see if we could do if we can do like a brief collaboration with her and Dr. Tauheed on this particular question. You know what? I think that's a good idea. The question being specifically, if America's buying power is in fact roughly $18.5 trillion, which again, I'm arguing, oh man. So very quickly, the Multicultural Economy Report from 2022 is the most recent one from the SeligCenter. The previous one from, I believe it was the most recent one prior to that, was the one I referenced in my book and paid at the time, I think, $100. And I think I mentioned this before, but looking it up again, the price has gone to $250 for the latest report. I have not endeavored to buy it. But I will say this. Maybe we can play a little, maybe we can make it a game, or maybe we can make it something, I don't know. If enough of you think it's worthwhile, I'd rather not, but I am also at the same time curious to see what adjustments or amendments they made to their methodology since I last looked at it. But the point being, when you look carefully at their methodology, as I detail in my book, it's unclear. It doesn't point to any material marker for determining this number, this buying power total, and it is not reflective of the Bureau for Labor Statistics reports to which SeligCenter and others refer, although in this case, they also refer to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. My point being, it's not clear. And as they say, their projections, they are approximations. That's not the exact word. I forgot the exact word all of a sudden. But anyway. But my real question, anyway, I'm sorry. The question for Professor Tauheed and Sister Jackie would be, if America's buying power is totaled at $18.5 trillion in 2021, and the gross domestic product, or GDP, of the country is roughly 20 and change trillion, is that reflective of the fact that this is roughly a 70+% consumer-based economy? And then does it confirm my own point about, does it or does it not, or challenge maybe, confirm my point about buying power being a false representation, or wrong. Does it confirm my point that buying power reflects all of the money available based on workers' incomes to those who own the economy, or what GDP is a measurement of, the value of goods and services and products sold in a given society in a given year? In other words, it's not meant to reflect, that is, buying power is not meant to reflect an actual representation of the economic condition, or is not meant to reflect the actual economic condition of a community, which is usually measured in wealth, sometimes income, or something, maybe some other standard based in actual material reality. Buying power is an advertising marketing concept meant to reflect for advertisers what is good for business, which is why when you go to the website and see the most recent report that you can also buy for $100 is the 2023 Georgia Economic Outlook Report. Gives a comprehensive and detailed look at Georgia's industries and their prospects for the year to come. My point here being, again, as I've talked about for a minute now, the SeligCenter is the buying power reports are meant to help businesses, starting with the state of Georgia, attract ad revenue, target consumers, et cetera, and so forth. The buying power of the multicultural economy from 2022, again, is $250. This report from 2019 is the one that I referenced. I suppose, is it now free? Word. So I guess if you're willing to wait a few years, I guess we could wait a few years and maybe this one will be free too. Okay. Okay. But anyway. So anyway, just to restate, my question would be, would the claim that buying power is totaling for the country 18.5 trillion confirm or not my argument again about buying power just being meant to reflect the amount of total available spending for those who own the economy and the businesses in the corporate world that organizes the economy to attract and capture? With the release of the 2022 report, the SeligCenter issued new estimates of minority buying power for the U.S. and its 50 states. The takeaway, let me make this a little bit big. I don't know why I'm struggling. Maybe you're probably struggling worse than I am. Sorry about that. The takeaway, nearly $1 out of every $5.75 of buying power in the U.S., 17.4% belongs to African American, Asian American, or Native American households. So the world's majority reflected as so-called minorities in this society are considered in terms of being roughly 17, a little over 17%, almost 17.5% of the buying power. Which, as I pointed out before, means that even if buying power were somehow to be considered as legitimate in terms of measuring somehow an economic strength, it shows here that even collectively with Black, Asian, and indigenous folks, it would be 17.5%. I think if you add Latinos, it would be, I think theirs is at least what Black folks are. As it says here, down here, Hispanic households increased 5% to 11.3% of the total consumer market in 2021. So maybe this would double. So at best, you would have, what is that, 30%, 35% of the economy if all of the world's majority people reflected in this country as minorities organized themselves together. They would have not even half the buying power of whites and control of none of the dominant industries and none of the political power. For business leaders, again, their focus, this means success hinges on learning how to market goods and services to more diverse markets, said Jeffrey Humphreys, director of the SeligCenter for Economic Growth. Again, their target audience are business leaders and what will mean success for them. He's not being asked here, nor is he writing to or producing research for what is going to mean success for Black people economically or otherwise. The SeligCenter's buying power estimates, that was the word I was looking for, not approximates, estimates. That's what they say in the reports. Indicate the growing economic power of various racial and ethnic groups, measure the vitality of geographic markets, help gauge business opportunities, suggest the potential for new and existing products, and guide advertising campaigns, he said. So again, economic power in this context does not mean sovereign, national, liberationist power. It means the power to enrich those who own the economy, the power that the equivalent again of a battery, the equivalent of Didn't the original version of the Matrix not mean for it to be the power source being a battery, but an algorithm? But they thought that it would be too complicated for audiences, so they reduced it to the Duracell thing. And I think, I mean, either way, that's the point. The point is the power here. We represent a power source akin to an algorithm or a battery, not not something meant to be human, autonomous, and legitimately free, or to be a political actor involved in the governance of civilization. Many factors drive the diversification of the U.S. consumer market, including population growth, favorable demographics, entrepreneurial activity, and rising educational attainment, Humphrey said. This is, again, part of the vague rubric of variables thrown in to reach their conclusion about buying power. The states with the largest increase in buying power mirror those with the fastest growth in their populations. So again, simply having more people to them reflects a greater ability to consume and therefore spend money on their products. It is not meant to reflect actual power. Go Maryland. Actually, that's where consumer power grew more slowly. So don't go Maryland. A public service and outreach unit of the Terry College of Business, the SeligCenter, has produced a multicultural economy report each year since 1990, except for 2020, when data disruptions following COVID-19 pandemic delayed production. I think I put the link in the show description already if you want to buy the report yourself or follow up. But anyway, so it's just just another fascinating, to me at least, reminder of what this is really all about. All right, just a quick reminder to all right, let's keep it moving, and hopefully I'm going to leave room for at least check some of the chat, which I'm sure is always a wonderful contribution to humanity. All right, so I really do appreciate that a number of folks asked me, given my love of the sport of football, what this country continues to want to call soccer. By the way, big shout out to more information to come, But I just taped today and literally still have, I don't know if it makes a difference, the makeup on from a contribution I will be making to my dear brother's forthcoming documentary, Can We Kick It? And it will be out next year. And I'm going to leave it at that. I can't wait till it comes out and to have him and his crew on at some point to talk about it. But that's where I was this morning. And because in relation to that, a number of folks have sent me requests for my thoughts on Ted Lasso and something I said a little while ago. And I appreciate always when these little things happen. It's not too often. I don't want to, again, overdo it, but I do, when little pockets of folks come, start to, I don't know, in a disorganized way, just sort of approach with a similar request. I appreciate it. So I will credit, I think I got this from the Chapo Trap House podcast, which I admitted I used to enjoy a little bit, little white boy thing, and then I left it because they did one or two episodes where they went into the area of again, when Seinfeld does Seinfeld and stays in his white milieu and doesn't force entry of unreal exchanges or relationships with Black and other people, I appreciate that, or I used to appreciate that. When they start making these poor forays into discussing areas that they are clearly not adept in, it becomes a problem. So I left them for a while, but I did catch what they said a little bit a while ago about Ted Lasso, and they made the point about Lasso being which is the show, which I'll come to in just a minute, about it being soft imperialism. they said soft power, I believe was their exact phrase. Soft imperialism is what I would call it. And I did watch the whole thing and wanted to enjoy it. I actually think Jason Sudeikis is as they come, is, I don't mind. He's funny, he's enjoyable as an actor. But very quickly, it just became, I admit, I just kept binging it, at least in the background, even. But it became pretty clear, like, okay, this is a problem. And it starts with something that the Chapo Trap House crew said, and I agree with it. One of their summary jokes was sort of this hokey white Southern country boy from an entirely different country, an entirely different sport, with no knowledge of the game of soccer, can just come bouncing over, or barreling over into England and solve everyone's problems. He's the answer. The friendly, affable, funny guy can just show up and solve everybody's problems. He can make the team successful that he gets hired to. He can make everybody feel good. He brings the woman owner of the team biscuits that we later find out he baked himself, and all this wonderful wonderfulness. But again, it becomes pretty clear that, did I not have any notes on this one? This wasn't the one. Are they really not showing up? What happened here? But it really does become clear that it's again soft power exported. And it reminds me of what Zbigniew Brzezinski said years ago about the difference in the U.S. empire from other empires in its ability to sustain itself will be its control over the internet and global communication. So when you can export a show like this, and the show essentially, I don't know why my notes aren't showing up, so I'll bring up another article in a second. But essentially, what I think this article was about was, or my point of bringing it up was for the history of the show. And maybe I got the wrong thing there, but hold on, I got another one. Let's just bring up this one here. But the point, anyway, the Ted Lasso is an American football coach. The first scene of the show is him celebrating in the locker room with his football team, doing some dance. And it's really just meant to show that he is a good guy. Everybody likes him. He's successful and motivating. It's not necessarily about tactics and this and that, but he just motivates. He's, and a woman owning a fictitious British football team in the English Premier League, almost despite her husband, or actually to spite her husband, who cheats on her, leaves her, and leaves her this team. She wants to bring in Ted Lasso, thinking he will lose, sink the team, destroy the team, destroy her ex-husband's love and legacy, the love that he had for the team and all this stuff, that his pride and joy. And then she would sell it, and something like that. He comes in, of course, he wins. Everybody loves him. He wins her over. He's just so friendly. There are no problems with the world, and certainly his role, or the US's role in the world, it's all to the good. And it leads to things, for instance, like this. The strange bipartisan appeal of Ted Lasso. And essentially what this article talks about in Politico is, and I think this may also be in the show description, is that everybody left or right of the aisle loves the show. The fact that Brits don't love the show, and some Irish folks don't love the show because they see what it is irrelevant, because first of all, it's not irony, but we'll save that for another day. It's ironic that so many people have hung the American self-image on a show with its roots in a mildly condescending joke about ugly Americans. Okay, here's the history that I meant to talk about. The Lasso character originated in a pair of cheeky NBC sports promotional videos from 2013, 2014, when the network had bought broadcast rights to Premier League games. And the Premier League is the dominant league in professional world football. It is based in England. As I talked about a little bit on my segment, we'll see to what extent it shows up or is necessary for their documentary, but it has particular quotas for how many non-English or so-called foreign-born players can be on the team or on these teams. There is a lot of, it has the most money, the most resources, the best players are in the Premier League. It is increasingly selling to owners from the United States, from the so-called Middle Eastern world, and this is causing a number of cultural and political crises among the fans, who remain mostly white and English, British, etc., and affluent, of course, for the most part. Although I think their class structure in terms of the fandom there is better than in the United States, but don't quote me on that part. So anyway, that's just a little background to what the Premier League is, just very quickly. In truth, people overseas might not be as charmed by Ted Lasso as us Yanks. The Guardian panned the show last August, as did the Irish Examiner, who groused about lazy American stereotyping, who wrote that this show may do more for Anglo-Irish relations at this very difficult time in our history than the Clintons ever did. The notion that kindness could be an American export didn't entirely compute over the past few years, certainly not when the head of state was insulting everyone in sight. But on this side of the Atlantic, Ted Lasso has been racking up awards. And that in many ways sums up my whole point about the show, that those who have a better understanding of the U.S.'s role in the world and who have a better understanding in the context of the British Premier League, the politics and histories of the league, the relationship of various countries there, whether it's Irish, English, etc. It is, and then again, you just have this character coming over there with his jokes and his affability, and there's all this vague, wonderful morality about peace and love and everybody's everybody, which I'll come back to in just a minute. It as it says here, Ted's sheer morality seems to cut across boundaries. And of course, so whether you're on the right, you can claim, oh, it's his good American Christian values. If you're on the so-called liberal left, you can say, oh, he's just a good American with his, his grit and his friendliness and his, whatever. And that's what but this is what solidified. It was so perfect. So in the last season, which it just wrapped, the final season of the show, I believe, I'm not sure, an embedded reporter more should be, maybe I should do more deserves to be done on the woke imperium and all of this. I'm going to focus momentarily on the issue of Pan-Africanism. The same could be said for the issue of homosexuality on the team. The way it's dealt with is so unrealistic and so hokey and so corny and so phony that I feel like it just disrespects anybody, what would have to be anybody's real experience. So, for instance, there's a gay player who almost very quickly emerges as both gay and in the closet. His closet status is exposed by accident to a fellow player who we're meant to believe is going to have, of course, because he's black, is going to have a hostile reaction to it. We come to find out later that his hostile reaction isn't to the fact that his friend is gay, but that his friend didn't think he could tell him. And it's like this corny kind of, he does this corny defense of him in public, which was the only real moment I thought of the series where one of the fans, not knowing about anybody's particular status, calls out to, I think, someone on the field with whatever I think the equivalent, did he say the F word? The British equivalent to the F word would be. So there's like this little allusion to the backwardness, which just, by the way, happened in Vegas at the Nations Cup of Nations Cup this week, where there was apparently a whole bunch of anti-gay slurs being yelled at folks and stuff like that. So we get a little bit of that in the series, but the reaction to it, where it's just everybody rallies around. There's no condemnation, no discussion. There's no extension of the real hostilities. And it just all gets quickly wrapped up. Everybody rallies around the dude. And then the embedded reporter who is himself gay and supports this player writes what is to be his book, I think it is, to conclude on what his experience embedded with the team is. And his initial title, although it's changed at the end, his initial title is The Lasso Way, meaning to give credit to Ted Lasso for providing the way to do things, to make a winning team and have a good culture in the locker room where everybody is equal and loved, and there's no racism and there's no homophobia and there's no nothing. There's no questions of ownership. There's no nothing. The owner's the good guy. The gay guy's the good guy. There is no anti-gay guy to be the bad guy. There's the bad guy fan is just quickly dismissed. The Indian who betrays the team and comes back as the good guy. The African, who I'm gonna come back to in a minute, is definitely the good guy because he is the embodiment of what the West would want an African to be. My goodness. And this honestly, this is why I'm never mad at whatever our differences are at the African-centered community, because you watch this stuff and it's like, son, are we serious? But I'm gonna come to that in a quick second. Anyway, so that's that. And then what the show does, speaking to that point, and here's my next note on that. So I wrote here, the white American soft imperial power, he just comes through with a smile and some aphorism and solves every problem from personal to professional. Boom. The next issue, the ruling power owner is Ghanaian, and he hates the Nigerian who himself loves the white woman team owner. So you get so you got the Nigerian player who ends up being pitted against a Ghanaian, elitist, wealthy, anti-Pan-African, fully reverse hashtag, at least in his anti-Pan-Africanness. And he becomes the owner that among all the other owners in the Premier League is the most dominant, the most hated, and the most powerful. I should have looked this up, and I didn't. I just assumed it to be true. I know that there are some Qatari and other Middle Eastern owners. I definitely know there are European and white American owners. I do not believe there are any continental African owners of teams in the Premier League. I'll double check, and the chat has me wrong on that. I'm happy to be corrected. Anyone else want to hit me up on a correction on that? And I'll double check. I should have had that I'm just now thinking, you're right. Whoever's thinking that, I'm with you. I should have had that. But to not only make him an owner, but to make him the most hated, violent, and food throwing. They literally have him throw a tantrum when he is defeated by the good guy white woman owner, who actually, anyway, he is apparently it's off screen. We're just meant to see the aftermath. He apparently, because he's the only one that walks out clean, threw food at everybody. So very quickly here, this is an article, disappointingly, from Lily Havstad and AfricaIsACountry.com, which I thought was, I thought when I first saw it was meant to be a title in irony, but it may have been, they may be meaning it literally, given the politics of this particular article. But this is the Nigerian brother that plays for Ted Lasso on the football team. He ends up having a romantic and loving, romantic, and then they separate, but it's clear they have feelings for each other, relationship with the white woman owner. He is the ultimate good guy who doesn't do anything wrong. But as this says here, he is an Afropolitan. The term Afropolitan has sparked intense debate here and elsewhere. The social theorist Achille Mbembe says Afropolitanism is a philosophical concept merging African and cosmopolitan to explore the many ways that Africans or people of African origin understand themselves as being part of the world rather than being a part. As a Nigerian footballer aspiring to belong in England, Sam rejects the exclusivity, elitism, and self-aggrandizing behaviors that mark well-founded critiques of the way some have commercialized the term coined by Tai Selassie in her 2005 essay. To me, given the positive reference to this and to this character, it suggests that the Afropolitan is the one who happily accepts what it means to be an African in a European city, looking to exist in a European business with European customers, ownership, etc. It is, to me, terribly problematic. And what is meant to ease our acceptance of this character as the good guy and this Afropolitanism as a good thing is that this character, Edwin Akufo, played by Sam Richardson, an American actor who grew up in the US and Ghana, who I actually think is very talented. He was in my favorite show, Veep. He was great, whatever. Plays a Ghanaian billionaire looking to recruit top African talent to his club, recruit this brother. The brother doesn't want to go. So then this guy becomes his enemy. And long story short, he vows to wreck the brother's career. He becomes the owner, the powerful owner I was just talking about, and vows to, he's just the hostile, he's the enemy. So it becomes the only two African characters, or the two primary African characters, are pitted against one another. And one is actually made to be the genuine authority and real powerhouse, real source of power and enmity. The dynamic between Edwin and Sam thrusts viewers into long-standing debates over who is African and who is not in a rather decisive way. And that's sort of my point. It is decisive, and it is to saying that the good way to be African, to the extent that either of them represent Africanisms or an appropriate Africanism, is problematic. That this is the two versions we'll get to see, and then it is decided to be decisive. It is to be the way Sam, the good guy Nigerian, one who is happy to be cosmopolitan, happy to the only thing he resents in terms of his Africanness is that the Ghanaian anti-hero prevents him from representing Nigeria nationally. So if there is something to contradict my argument here, at least he wanted to play for Nigeria, and they didn't have him trying to give up his citizenship or sign on to play for England or something like that. But outside of that, but even then, it would be sort of, I'm going to come back as a Europeanized, cosmopolitanized African and lead my people out of savagery. So maybe I take back my own self-contradiction. It is exciting and refreshing to see the subject take center stage on a show as popular as Ted Lasso. I could not disagree more. I could not disagree more. We should never want a show like Ted Lasso to take on some center stage role, or a role in center staging these kinds of issues. Anyway, about 30% of all players in European leagues hail from the continent of Africa, but only 1% go on to coaching and managerial careers in Europe. That fact is not reflected is not discussed in the show. In fact, it's reflected fraudulently in terms of the one Ghanaian guy being an actual owner. So as I said just a minute ago. Sam Obasanya's character, particular brand of Afropolitanism, gives us a glimpse of what it might look like. This is what I'm saying. This is not a good thing. An acceptance of our common humanity. Again, I'm never for that. Never for that. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Right. And then even the Indian dude, that was my last note. Even the Indian dude who starts off as a good guy, becomes the anti-hero or an anti-hero and an antagonist, comes back once he learns to accept Ted Lasso-ness and to the Lasso way of imperialism, which was the subtitle I added to it, the Lasso way of imperialism. He can come back into the good graces of the team and to Ted Lasso. It's pathetic. I thought this would be a problem. I don't think I'd have time here, but let's keep going. Anyway, don't forget to. All right, this was also sent to me recently. This story about Prince, and I think I'm gonna rush through both, and then we'll just come back to it, and then I'll make way. I don't want to. It's no big deal. Why Prince changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol 30 years ago and what happened. And this came out in Variety on the 7th, about 10 days ago. Anyway, his motivation for doing so was never clearly stated, although many assumed it was a ploy to get out of his contract with longtime label Warner Brothers. He announced the decision in a statement that read, "It is an unpronounceable symbol whose meaning has not been identified. It's about thinking in new ways, tuning into a new frequency." The issue, long story short, just to quickly summarize, the issue is that, and what they consider here, to what extent it is, or to what extent they have the details to flesh out the truth of it. And it's not, I don't think it's a question of how true that it is true, but that it's a contract dispute that Warner Brothers wanted to limit how fast Prince could put out music, how much obviously would be made by each party by the sales, how long songs could be, how many songs could be on an album. All of this was a problem for him. And after Graffiti Bridge did not do well, the company was not interested in listening to him. So he came back, and this is why, for those of us who remember the Diamonds and Pearls album, which produced some classics, including for us haters, I Hate You. He came back to reassert himself as a power player in the industry. And which led him back into more conflict with the label. He was slightly more expansive to Larry King that year. I had to search deep within my heart and spirit, and I wanted to make a change and move to a new plateau in my life. And one of the ways in which I did that was to change my name. It sort of divorced me from the past and all the hangups that go along with it. This is him being a little, what's the word? Indirect, a little cheeky about, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a little, watching too much British TV. But that's the less direct about what his issues were, more circumspect. Warner Brothers was not about to redress his two main issues: that he couldn't release music as often as he wanted, and the fact that the company and not he owned the rights to his recordings, especially when he just signed a lucrative new contract. So he began, out of frustration, to put slave on his face and to rebel more openly and aggressively. This Variety article sits down with two players, Michael Pagnotta, Prince's independent publicist at the time, and Jeff Gold, Warner Brothers Records Senior VP of Creative Services, and later the label's general manager. I got to Warner Brothers in 1990, around the time Graffiti Bridge, and then they talk about when Diamonds and Pearls came out. Let me just move ahead, skip through some of this here. Gold says Prince was constantly doing the unexpected. His reputation was don't be surprised by anything, but it becomes apparent pretty quickly that he's doing this so he can say, well, you guys signed Prince, but I'm not Prince anymore. That is, I'm now a symbol. I'm the symbol, which of course isn't going to fly, but we decided to have fun with it, which actually annoyed him even more. It was just another crazy thing from Prince, and we thought we could use it as a publicity stunt to get some attention, right? Around 5 years after he left Warner Brothers in 1996, Prince reverted his name back to Prince, which he retained for the rest of his life. He released albums at rapid clip, often 2 or 3 per year, yet he never approached that commercial critical peaks he'd hit in the 80s and early 90s. So my point in all this would be that, and this is the neo-colonial part of it, that music as, again, part and parcel of the power structure and the apparatus of colonialism and its cultural, particularly its cultural project. Who becomes popular and what form their popularity takes is not up to the individual. It's increasingly a manicured process, a managed and manicured process. So Prince, of course, would not be allowed to reach those same heights. He would never get the same level of promotion, product placement, reference, sales support, etc., despite being prolific and producing some great music. And that's what is the point, that once you leave the system, once you break with Warner Brothers, yes, you can ride already established fame to a certain level, but that's it. And were Prince not that talented and not previously signed, all of that post Warner Brothers music that many of us still love would not even be heard to the extent we've heard it, or known to the extent we heard it. We certainly wouldn't have been able to see him touring with it. Anyway, I'll leave it there with a quick reminder to all right. I'm definitely happy to come back to this that I'm going to share here, because it does deserve more than the 10 minutes or so that I have left. And I always hate not being able to truly engage with the chat. So I apologize and appreciate you being here anyway. And I also acknowledge that you all did not need me to be there. So, but I appreciate you. So I want to say this very quickly. I was given permission to share, but I'm only going to share a little bit because first, I got this article from our dear sister Erica, our colleague here at BPM. Why I got the article and the context in which I got the article, I will simply say I am thrilled, honored, excited about. But the news is hers. So I'm going to let her share it at her pace, at her time and in her way, and just leave it there for now. Big shout out to Erica. Big things coming. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm gonna let her share the announcement. That said, my first note here very quickly before I bring up the article in question is that this article explains why, my quick summary is that this article explains why it's so difficult to interpret the previous media and culture that we were just talking about already, this show, but all media and culture that they contain. For instance, all the subtle hints towards self-help, individualism, capitalist market solution, entrepreneurialism, etc. In other words, we are encouraged. It's hard to interpret all the subtle messages that we get. Particularly as it pertains to financial literacy or economic analysis, but specifically here about financial literacy. So I'm gonna pull this up here. We'll definitely come back to this another time, but I think we can the point can be made very quickly here. In a piece from 2017 by Dr. Max Haven in journal Cultural Politics, volume 13, issue 3, 2017, Duke University Press. The article is titled "The Uses of Financial Literacy, Financialization, the Radical Imagination, and the Unpayable Debts of Settler Colonialism." This article is a contribution to critiques of the mainstream trends in financial literacy education and argues that they typically produce a profound financial illiteracy by obfuscating the systemic and structural dimensions of debt, financial hardship, and the patterns of financialization, thus reaffirming a neoliberal trend to privatize social problems. Now, the context he's writing about is Canada and its relationship to indigenous people there. But as we can see here very quickly, it is easily relatable to the situation here. That is, what people call financial literacy is better known, as we've been calling it here and elsewhere, financial illiteracy, because it obfuscates the realities that create the problems in the first place. In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis and its aftermath of austerity, financial literacy education has been widely propounded around the world as a remedy for rising personal debt levels. There is inclusive evidence to suggest that financial literacy education actually produces significant and consistent economic results in people's lives. More broadly, financial literacy education tends to reinforce and reify conventional neoliberal approaches, attitudes, and ideologies towards debt, credit, finance, and money. I would be more interested in revisiting this sentence because it's contradicted throughout the rest of. There's inconclusive. That is, I'm sorry. No, it's correct. There's inconclusive evidence. I'm sorry. That's why I'm sorry. There's inconclusive evidence to suggest that financial literacy education actually produces significant and consistent economic results in people's lives, meaning that there's really no evidence that it helps. It points towards individual responsibility, and in this sense, they fundamentally obscure the systemic, structural, and social factors that shape personal financial experiences under neoliberalism, global capitalism, especially as those factors intersect systems of oppression and exploitation, including those based on race, gender, class, and colonial history. Financial literacy education typically also produces a profound neoliberal financial illiteracy. It is taking over a wide variety of institutions and social spaces, including, of course, as we've talked about here, digital media and social media. And then his article concludes with him drawing the question he draws out the question of what financial literacy that awakened rather than deadened the radical imagination would look like. So in other words, the article goes through and summarizes the problems with what is called financial literacy, which is really a neoliberal omission of capitalism, colonialism, and white supremacy, and an inducement to self-help, banking, financial check management, so on and so forth. But then he concludes with a piece of where similar to my own work, I have to admit, is like the weakest part of the argument, and the part I don't agree with. So my note here is that he concludes with, by raising the question of what if the colonists saw value in indigenous forms of economic exchange and societal governance. And I said that this is the most weak part of the argument, because were colonists to consider the value in indigenous forms of government and economic exchange, they would have been forced to post some revolutionary process. Like, the only way that they would see value in that is through revolution. There is no value to them in something that is not a colonizing, extracting, oppressive system or arrangement. So Haven starts off by one of the points he makes here is he talks about financialization, which he defines as a profound expansion of the magnitude of wealth and economic power wielded by the so-called FIRE sector. FIRE, as I've learned a lot through Ben Norton and Michael Hudson, and primarily is the finance, insurance, and real estate sector of the economy. By the way, in which you find almost no Black ownership. But it's this financialization of the economy through their involvement, through investment, through insurance, through real estate, where most of the wealth has been extracted and exploited out of the economy. Whoops. So, in fact, here, Haven does bring in some comparisons to the Black American condition here, though his focus is primarily in the indigenous in Canada. And this is, I think, a very important and good point. Today, the world is divided not so much into the haves and have-nots as it is into the risk takers and those at risk. It is by no means an accident that the line between the risk takers mirrors Du Bois's color line. And but now, and this is the point of my own work around buying power, what we see is that the oppression, exploitation, and dispossession is conducted, but in ways that blame victims for their failure to seize their potential. And that's largely what Haven says is the point of so-called financial literacy projects and campaigns. That's why there's state support for them. That's why there's investment in teaching about them. He even mentions Charles Mills here, and what he calls a racial illiteracy here might be understood as the silent pedagogy of what Charles Mills calls the epistemology of white ignorance, one that teaches a certain systematic forgetting and reinforces the presumption of equality, where often deadly inequity persists in spite of formal legal equality. One of the more important aspects I thought of this article was what it talks about the abuses of literacy and connecting financial literacy claims to histories of colonialism and literacy and the imposition of language and alphabet and concepts onto colonized people meant to oppress and exploit them while claiming to teach them and bring them into civilization. This is the best part of the article, I thought, where in the context of Fanon, in the context of other scholars studying the indigenous experience, literacy has always been a key to producing a comprador class of indigenous intelligentsia and functionaries capable of mediating between colonizer and colonized. Does that not perfectly explain this coterie of cryptogandist, Black capitalist, investment pushing, financial literacy pundits? Where in reference to a European scholar studying this, who wrote a 1957 book, The Uses of Literacy, talks about a business model of appropriating the working class cultural vernacular and sensibility. And this is exactly what those that are most critical of are doing, that they present themselves as being from the hood, from the community of the people, and presenting tactics to help Black people and others get over with investment and this and that and financial literacy. But all that has been done is the appropriation of working class cultural vernacular. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap there because I want us to make way for Warrior Class, and I'll come back to all of this. But I did want to at least try to quickly address this continuity of neocolonialism, whether it's through culture, whether it's through claims of buying power, whether it's through the broad claim of financial literacy. It's all meant to expand the reach of to expand the colonial reach and to limit. And this is exactly what my whole argument around buying power initially began with and hopefully continues on with, which is that if we can't get past some of the mythology intentionally constructed for us, we can't develop the analyses in the organization that will lead us to genuine liberation and freedom. So buying power is just one subset. Financial literacy is a broader category of this, but clearly, as Haven is pointing out, is meant to create a financial illiteracy because it denies us a recognition of colonialism, capitalism, exploitation, white supremacy, et cetera, and so forth, and co-opts our struggle and our language to repackage back onto us, as Fanon talked about, the colonized, ossified version of our cultural expression that reaffirms our colonial experience. So anyway, more to come, obviously. Make sure you got the bell rung, like, share, subscribe, share this and other content coming up, including that of Warrior Class, which I'm about to go get ready for. So thanks, everybody. look to engage with you more later on. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And I'll catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. Thanks, everyone.